You're listening to The Bob Dutko Show, fearlessly defending the faith with you every day. We need to be equipping ourselves with the evidence for our faith. But let's face it, folks, there are a lot of lies that we're being told today. And there's this big move for experiential truth, and we all find our own truths, if you will. Well, that's nonsense. All spiritual paths lead to God. No, that is not true. It's not scriptural. We're going to talk about this now with Pamela Christian. She's a radio host, speaker, teacher. She's author of this book, Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. And this is really cool for me because Pam's a friend of mine. We got to know each other when she was at KBRT, Crawford Broadcasting Station in California. Haven't seen her or talked to her in quite a while, but she joins me now, Pamela Christian. Pam, how are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I think this is so cool. And your book is endorsed by Josh McDowell, and it's a tremendous book. So I know. So it's so cool. It's like, good for you. I haven't seen you in such a long time. I've been wondering how you're doing. So first of all, how exciting is it for you just on a personal level? You got this book out now, and it's got to be really kind of neat for you to know that it's helping people, equipping people to stand firm in what their faith is and what's actually really true.
Oh, it most definitely is. You probably know I've earned the title Faith Doctor,
right,
which is just an endearing term. I'm a natural-born advocate, and I've been in ministry for about 20 years. So when I happened across this article that was published through ABC News about Americans being tolerant of religious faith, I thought, okay, let's read this and find out what this is about. And as I went through the article, I was astounded. It wasn't just about people being respectful of others of different religious beliefs. Rather, it was about Americans programming their own faith. Like they program their iPhones. They'll take a little bit from Judaism, a little bit from Christianity, a little bit from Islam, and then that is their faith. And I was so sad to realize that this is what people are doing.
Right. Well, and especially if you really think about this logically, to craft your own faith that feels good to you and makes sense to you, it really does expose the fact that these people don't really believe that faith is real. You can't honestly believe something is true if it's something that you've piecemealed together from the buffet of spirituality that's out there. It tells me that people are kind of in denial, then they're believing something that deep in their heart of hearts they have to know isn't really true.
Well, and in the sense that people often say Christians check their brains out at the door when they step into the Christian faith, what I'm seeing is that people who are trying to, program their own faith, they are really the ones who are not applying good, sound logic and reason. Bob, it used to be that logic was required in our education.
Right.
Now, only if you're a philosophy major do you have to take a course in logic. But it doesn't take a lot of intelligence. It just takes sound, basic common sense to do a cursory overview of the different major world religions, which I do in my book. I devote a chapter to Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, and I also devote a chapter to New Age so that people can learn the origin and the basic tenets of each of the beliefs and get an understanding of what each stands for. They're very, very different.
Right. Well, they are. And this is something that, this certainly, they all can't be true. You can't have more than one faith system, if you will, that's true. There can be overlapping teachings in some areas, but when it comes to the nature of who God is and what happens after you die, then they contradict each other. So you can't have multiple religions, if you will, that are correct. But Pam, I'm going to try to turn you into a psychologist for a moment. What is it about people today that they don't seem to have a quest for what's actually really true? They want to believe what makes them feel good. They want to believe what feels right to them, but they don't really have so much of a sense of, am I believing what's actually really true or not? Because I want to believe what's true above everything else. How is it that we've gotten to this point to where people don't care so much about what's true, they care about what feels good?
Well, you're saying it. It's what feels good. It appeals to the carnal nature of humanity. Not anybody naturally wants to have a God, somebody that is an authority over you. We all naturally want to be our own authority. We naturally want to do the things that appeal to the flesh, the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh. That's just natural. So they're just doing what comes natural.
Right. What do you find are some of the biggest lies, some of the biggest problems, deceptions, and perversions of faith that people are falling for today?
I think it's deception itself, Bob. One of the questions I ask early on when I go speak, and I love doing that, but one of the questions I stumbled on, actually, was this. I would ask my audience, who in this room wants to live your life on the basis of a lie? And no one ever raises their hand to that question.
Right.
That's very revealing. That means that the truth is universal. It means that we as humans naturally believe that truth is better or preferred over lies or deception. And yet I assert that unless we intentionally examine what we believe and why we believe it, we can easily be deceived and not know it, because it's the very nature of deception that the victim is unaware.
I want to talk to you about the belief that many people have that all spiritual paths converge up the same mountain to the same point of God, which you and I, of course, know that's not true. But this is a growing belief that even many self-described Christians have, that multiple religions can lead to eternal salvation. Pew Research conducted a poll of self-described Christians asking them, do you believe that more than one religion, or do you believe that non-Christian, actually they use the word non-Christian, do you believe non-Christian religions can also lead to salvation? And it was remarkable. 57% of self-described Christians said yes. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody's going to raise their hand in a church service and admit to that. And very few people are going to raise their hand and admit to that if you're speaking to them or if I'm speaking to them or somebody else. But in an anonymous, private telephone survey, the truth has a funny way of coming out. And so I would argue this is a disease, Pam, that's not spreading just through secular society, but it's creeping its way like a cancer through the church.
Absolutely, and that's a large reason I decided I had to write the book now. After reading the article that I mentioned published by ABC News, I realized that Christians are being woefully deceived. And so the challenge is to intentionally examine what you believe and why you believe it. You know, our faith is a lot like automobile insurance. We need to have it in place before there's an accident or before there's a crisis. And that's what I want for people. I want them to have a strong faith conviction that can see them through anything that they might encounter in life. And the only way we can do that is if we do intentionally examine what we believe, and we are confident that it lines up on truth, and we can stake our life, our eternal life, on it.
Right. Well, hang on just a second. We'll pick it up from there in a couple of minutes. More with Pamela Christian. The book again, folks, Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. It's from Westbow Press. Also, go to Pam's website at PamelaChristianMinistries.com. And more just a couple minutes from now here on The Bob Dutko Show. You're listening to The Bob Dutko Show. Continuing our discussion with Pamela Christian. She's author of the book Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. And so, Pam, let's talk a little bit about Christianity compared to other religions, if we could. Now, obviously, I don't like referring to Christianity as a religion, but for the sake of speaking the world's language, okay, fine. There are people that will see Christianity as one of the many religions on the buffet of spirituality, and so for someone who says to you, Pam, well, hey, look, you Christians are so convinced that you have the only truth, but the Buddhists think they're right, the Hindus think they're right, the Muslims think they're right, the Confucianists think they're right, the New Agers think they're right. So what makes you so sure that you have the only truth in Jesus Christ instead of merely a faith system that's the most prominent faith of Western society?
It's just a matter of examining the evidence. And that's what I want my readers to do. I've tried to write the book as inductively as possible. I do share up front that I've taken this journey myself. I've examined my faith. I've examined what I believed. I looked at the major world religions. And so I've tried to write this inductive. But I have concluded that Christianity is the only thing that makes sense. And I'm not talking intellectual sense only. I'm talking even from a spiritual perspective. There is more objective, verifiable evidence in support of Christianity than there is of any of the other major world religions.
And give us just an example or two. I mean, a couple things that come to mind that tell you in your examination you can't create parity between Jesus and the other religions.
Well, to look at the document of religious authority for each of the respective religions is really a good way to also compare them.
All right.
When it comes to the Bible, in contrast to all the other documents of religious authority, the Bible has withstood the test of time unlike anything else. We have the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which has provided us additional evidence from the oldest known manuscripts that we've got a Bible today that is substantially the same as what was originally penned. That can't be said of any of the other documents of religious authority.
Right. Well, and by the way, I would add to that as well. Just look at the actual claims of Jesus compared to these others. I mean, Jesus made really extraordinary claims about himself as an exclusive means of salvation, and that he would rise from the dead and such. These are really specific, exclusive claims. And so it seems to me if Jesus declared these things and he backed up his claims by showing a command over the laws of physics, sickness, the weather, life and death itself, if Jesus can back up those claims and he made those claims, it seems to me that puts him in a category completely separate from Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, or any of the rest of them.
Absolutely does. And, you're making a point that I hear a lot. People are offended that Christians say that this is the only way to heaven. Actually, we're not saying that. We're repeating what Christ himself said. He said he is the only way to the Father, and no one comes to the Father except through him. But also, we need to understand, Christianity is not exclusive. People like to think it is. People misunderstand and think it is. In reality, Christianity is inclusive to anyone who wants to come.
Right. Well, and that's an important distinction. But one of the things I would say, and I know this is the point that you make here as well, we can put this on Jesus' shoulders. Because you said an important point there, that you're not saying this yourself. All you're doing is repeating what Jesus himself said. And it seems to me that that's one of the challenges that we need to put on people. When I was engaging some Muslims at a speaking engagement the other night, I know that Muslims will often say, oh, we revere Jesus, we love Jesus, peace be upon him, and that's great. But as I told him, Jesus himself declared, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. If you do not have the Son, you do not have the Father. These are claims that Jesus himself made. Was Jesus wrong? And it's very difficult for somebody to utter the words, Jesus was wrong. And so it seems as though you can kind of paint people into a corner here by forcing them to either accept the words of Jesus or reject the words of Jesus. We've got to make it about what the Lord said and not allow them to try to make it about what we say.
Exactly. And my lead is with love. I mean, I took this journey. I came to a crisis in my life when I had to realize that my faith was faulty. And that's what took me on the path to discover truth. I started there. What is truth? Which is an age-old question. And in finding all the answers in the puzzle pieces that I did, which came about later in life to actually write this book, I thought, that's the same journey that other people need to go on. They need to start with the question, what is truth?
Mm-hmm. What was faulty about your faith?
Oh, I grew up in the 60s. I was influenced by Hare Krishna. I was influenced by all the Eastern religions and the Beatles and everything else. So I had a hodgepodge, and I didn't realize it. I mean, if anybody had asked me, I said I was a Christian. And I thought for sure I would go to heaven if I were to die because I said a prayer that the Sunday school teacher suggested that I pray to have Jesus be my forever friend. But when I came to a crisis, when I needed my faith the most, and it failed me, it put me in a tailspin. And I had to then, in a very systematic fashion, go back and decide and understand, what do I believe, why do I believe it, what is faulty, what is trustworthy, what is worthy of my faith. Mm-hmm. And it's this very journey that I invite my readers to please take. And it takes a lot of courage, Bob, because when you examine what you've believed your whole life, there's a chance you might find that something's wrong, something's faulty.
Right.
And that's frightening all by itself. But there's also a potential of a sense of betrayal, because a lot of us believe things that our parents or other people of significant influence brought us to believe. And so it does take courage, and I believe with all my heart it must be an intentional, systematic effort, because just living in this world, we can acquire deceptions and falsehoods without realizing it unless we hold them up to the light of scrutiny.
Very true. Hang on just a second. We'll spend our last few minutes together next. More with Pamela Christian. The book again, folks, Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. It's Westbow Press. Go to Pam's website as well at PamelaChristianMinistries.com. And more a couple minutes from now here on The Bob Dutko Show. You're listening to The Bob Dutko Show. Spending our last few minutes with Pamela Christian, my friend, who's a big-time author now, and you got to look for a book, Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. And really, it is a remarkable book. She's been endorsed by Josh McDowell, Dan Story, Craig Hazen, many others. So look for it. And, you know, Pam, one of the things I want to ask you about in our last few minutes, because I want to get to the resurrection of Jesus, which you devote some time to as well, and I'm glad. But before we even get to that, the concept of heaven and hell, salvation only through Jesus Christ. Here's one of the tough pills for a lot of people to swallow, including many Christians. If you ask them, do you need to accept Jesus to be saved? They go, oh, well, yes, because they know that's the right answer on paper. But then you say, okay, what about that sweet little grandmother who never hurt a fly and done all these great, wonderful deeds, but she never accepted Jesus Christ? Can you accept that she's going to die in her sins and she's going to go to hell? Or that really decent Muslim or that Buddhist who's just a wonderful guy and helps people and lives in love and whatever else, but can you accept that they're going to go to hell? Then people have a hard time with that. They go, well, no, but if they're a really good person, if they're a nice person. So people don't want to admit this, Pam, but we almost have a kind of karma mentality of if your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, then you're going to be in good shape in the afterlife. And so talk to that if you could, to help us understand that heaven is not the default for people that are decent people, that none of us are deserving of heaven on our own.
Yeah, you know, and you're right. There is that karma-like mentality, and it's not just in America. I believe it's worldwide. I really do.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that people have come to this place, and it's a type of tolerance and political correctness run amok. The Bible is very clear. God so loved the world.
Right.
Every one of us have been created in His image. Every single one of us is a being that He wants to have a relationship with. He's already gone to great lengths to offer us a clear path to redemption and to be united with Him through faith in Jesus Christ. With God doing so much already, He's not about to let this little sweet grandma that's done all these great deeds live her entire life without some introduction to Jesus.
Right. Well, and this is... No, go ahead.
I was going to say that even in the Bible we have, you know, Romans chapter 1, where it talks about all of creation declares the existence of God.
Right. Well, and it's true, and we have to trust that the Lord knows what He's doing in the ways that He reveals Himself to people. And I know I've heard people say, oh, it's so unfair, people of other cultures and other lands, and they don't know. You know, I was interviewing, Pam, this Muslim missionary. As a person, as a Christian, but they've been working as a missionary for years in Middle Eastern nations. And this person said that they interviewed over 100 former Muslims that are now Christians and asked them, how did you come to know the Lord? And do you know that 60% of them told him Jesus appeared to me in a dream and revealed the truth of who He was? I mean, 60%, that's a remarkable number.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is make this book, I love apologetics, but I want to be a real person.
Right.
I want to touch people right where they're at. And in fact, I'm very gratified that the reviews I'm getting on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and such are saying that that I'm speaking with the language of love in this book. So I'm really delighted about that because that is my intent.
Right.
One of the things I did, in addition to having the chapters devoted to the top 5 major world religions and New Age, is I found people who were formerly of either Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or what have you, people who were raised in that faith who had an epiphany or an experience or came to the saving knowledge that Christianity, Jesus Christ, is the only way. And I have their testimonies in this book as well. And it's very, very compelling. And when it comes to the one gentleman who had been raised as a Muslim, yes, there was an epiphany specific to Jesus Christ revealing Himself.
Let's, in our last couple of minutes together, I'm going to get about 2 minutes left, but the resurrection of Jesus, of course, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul lays out how very vital the resurrection is. Our faith is completely in vain if He hasn't risen from the dead. But it's important for people to know this isn't just some kind of blind faith that we have. Jesus really did, in real space and time, physically rise from the dead 2,000 years ago. And so there's a lot of evidences. Pam, we could spend the next 3 hours just going over evidences for this. But what are a couple of big ones that stand out to you?
Well, I think that especially when we want to consider something from a fair perspective or a legal perspective, he had over 500 witnesses eyewitnesses of him after his resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in any court of law, 1 or 2 witnesses is all you need, but 500?
Right.
And this happened in the time where contemporaries would have known. It wasn't a long time later. So if people were claiming that they'd seen Jesus, and their contemporaries would be there to hold them accountable. So I think that in and of itself is an amazing fact that can be attested.
It is. Well, and by the way, I'll even add to that. 500 witnesses, it's technically 500 brethren, and you know this, 2,000 years ago, when people wrote, and the way that people wrote in literature and recording things, and this applies to the writers and Paul's epistles as well, you counted the men, you didn't count the women and children. If there were 250 men and 250 women, you counted as 250 brethren. So 500 men, you factor in women and children, Jesus was probably seen by a good 1,500 to 2,000 people, and we're told that he hung around for 40 days during this time. So I'm thinking, he's around for 40 days. You have hundreds and hundreds of people seeing him. This was something that, even for those who didn't see him risen from the dead, you had hundreds and hundreds of people still alive to corroborate the claims that he rose from the dead. That, to me, I think you're right. That's some pretty strong evidence.
Absolutely. And there's so much more. You talk about women. Yes, very specifically in the Bible, Mary Magdalene is one of the first women he appeared to. So it's exciting. When you actually want to find the truth, it's very exciting to find these nuggets that take you on the path to the next nugget and so on.
Right.
I've heard it said that once a person has made up their mind, the facts are annoying.
Right.
And that's true. But this book is for seekers, for skeptics, it's for people who genuinely want to find the truth. And in fact, I love this, Bob, you'll like this too. I had a reader tell me that she tore out the pages, the endorsement pages, which are always put in the front of a book. She tore out the endorsement pages and then gave the book to an unbelieving friend because she wanted the book to be as inductive for the reader as possible. I loved it, so I recommend it.
All right. Well, I don't know how much Josh and everybody would appreciate that, but folks, I do encourage you, look for the book. Again, it's Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. And Pam, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere, but I've also got a contest running on my website, so that's a fun place to visit.
Okay, well, go there, everybody. It's PamelaChristianMinistries.com. Again, PamelaChristianMinistries.com. The book is from Westbow Press. And, Pam, it has been a while since we have seen each other, and one of these days you got to, I don't know when I'm going to get to California again or if you're ever going to get to Detroit anytime soon, but it would be great to see you again. And just seriously, congratulations on the book and continued success with it, and stay in touch.
Thank you, Bob, so very much. It's been very fun for me, too. I treasure your friendship.
Oh, thank you, Pam. You take care now. All right, bye-bye. Folks, get it. Examine Your Faith. It's Westbow Press by Pamela Christian. You're listening to The Bob Dutko Show. Go to our Facebook page. I welcome your comments there. You can also email me directly, bob@crawfordbroadcasting.com.